are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. One way, Jesus, you're the only one. So I throw up my hands and praise you again and again. 'Cause all that I have is a hallelujah.
And this is from Hebrews 11, verses 32 to 33. It says this: how much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of the faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. Jephthah, the Gileadite, was one tough warrior. He was the son of a prostitute, but Gilead was his father. Meanwhile, Gilead's legal wife had given him other sons, and when they grew up, his wife's sons threw Jephthah out. So Jephthah fled from his brothers and went to live in the land of Tob. Years later, the Ammonites waged war against Israel, and the desperate elders of Gilead came begging Jephthah to lead them. After tough negotiation, he agreed on the condition that he would become their head if he returned victorious. Before engaging the Ammonites, Jephthah sent messengers to their king, disputing Israel's historical claim to the land. God's spirit came upon Jephthah. He went across Gilead and Manasseh, went through Mizpah of Gilead, and from there approached the Ammonites. Jephthah made a vow before God: if you give me a clear victory over the Ammonites, then I'll give to God whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in one piece from among the Ammonites. I'll offer it up in a sacrificial burnt offering. Then Jephthah was off to fight the Ammonites, and God gave them to him. He beat them soundly. 20 cities, a massacre. Ammonites brought to their knees by the people of Israel. Jephthah came home to Mizpah. His daughter ran from the house to welcome him home. She was his only child. He had no son or daughter except her. When he realized who it was, he ripped his clothes, saying, dearest daughter, I'm dirt. I'm despicable. My heart is torn to shreds. I made a vow to God and I can't take it back. She said, dear father, if you made a vow to God, do to me what you vowed. God did his part and saved you from your Ammonite enemies. His daughter asked only for 2 months to mourn her youth in the mountains with her friends. Afterward, he carried out his vow, and an annual commemoration arose in Israel for her. Later, the men of Ephraim confronted Jephthah, threatening him for not including them in the battle. A civil conflict erupted, and Jephthah's forces defeated them, seizing the Jordan crossings. Jephthah judged Israel for 6 years. Then he died and was buried in Gilead. How is it that Jephthah, having lived a life and made such bad decisions, was still counted in Hebrews 11 as one of the heroes of faith? And I want to share with you some observations that I have from Jephthah's story. The first is this: our past affects us, but it does not disqualify us. Jephthah had a rough background, cast out from his family, and they didn't want him to inherit any of his dad's inheritance. But one of the things that I observed is that doesn't matter to God. It does not disqualify Jephthah from being called into a position of leadership. The second observation that I have is this: that being called by God does not necessarily mean knowing God. Because when we look at Jephthah's story, he was placed in a position of leadership, but he failed to understand God's heart. God's heart was for his people. And that kind of vow, that kind of offering was not something that God wanted from his people. The third observation that I had was this: being for God or being labeled as one of God's does not necessarily mean faithfulness and obedience. That is a choice that we all have to make. The fourth observation: just because someone godly caused us harm does not mean God caused us harm. Now, when I look at Jephthah's story, I see that, okay, I can see that the failure was Jephthah's, not the Lord's. The Lord does not abandon his children. The last observation is this: that our disobedience has consequences, but God is merciful. 2 Corinthians 4 verses 1 through 10. And therefore, since God in his mercy has given us this new way, we never give up. We reject all shameful deeds and underhanded methods. We don't try to trick anyone or distort the word of God. We tell the truth before God, and all who are honest know this. If the good news we preach is hidden behind a veil, it is hidden only from people who are perishing. Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. You see, we don't go around preaching about ourselves. We preach that Jesus Christ is Lord, and we ourselves are your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, "Let there be light in the darkness," has made this light shine in our hearts so we could know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus Christ. We now have this light shining in our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This makes it clear that our great power is from God, not from ourselves. We are pressed on every side by troubles, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. Through suffering, our bodies continue to share in the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be seen in our bodies. What can we learn from Jephthah's story and from what Paul is sharing in 2 Corinthians? First, do not let our past limit us from following God. God, in his mercy, he entrusts to you his calling. Do not let our past limit us from following God. The second is this: get to know God by being in the Word. Paul contrasts being blinded by Satan in verse 6 of 2 Corinthians to knowing God's glory. And the only way we are able to live out God's will is to know God. The third is this: obey the Lord with all our hearts in everything. Paul says that we share in Jesus' death and life, so Jesus will be evident. And sharing in Jesus' death and life means a lifetime of obedience. The fourth is this: to go to the Lord with our hurts, and we choose to forgive humans. The fifth is this: God is bigger than our flaws and failures. Paul says we're fragile clay jars, but for some reason, God gives us this great treasure, the treasure of knowing Jesus and having Jesus in our lives, being called to live lives that reflect Jesus. And I want to share this verse from Psalms 103, verses 13 through 14. The Lord is like a father to his children, tender and compassionate to those who fear him. For he knows how weak we are. He remembers we are only dust.
'Cause all that I have is a hallelujah.